Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Box Office Talk. This is the show where I break down what happened at the box office, see if my predictions for the top 5 are correct, and then make predictions for next week's top 5, so let's get right on into it. Last week I predicted that number 1 would be The Dark Tower, number 2 would be Detroit, number 3 would be Dunkirk, number 4 would be The Emoji Movie, and number 5 would be Girls Trip. And surprisingly, guys, I only got 1 out of 5 of my predictions right this weekend. It was pretty bad, a pretty slow box office weekend and a pretty bad weekend for predictions for me. So let's get right on into it. Number 1 was the only one I got right, The Dark Tower, the Stephen King adaptation. That, of course, when a bunch of people saw the trailers, they thought that's probably not going to do too well. I held out some hope, and it did get number 1 like I thought, but it wasn't as huge as I thought it might have been. I was thinking maybe about $30 million opening weekend. Nope, $19 million on its opening weekend. Now, when I last checked, like a couple minutes ago, they haven't updated it with any foreign totals yet, so they could be adding that up and it'll make a profit, but this thing is on a budget of $60 million, and it needed to do a lot, much more in order to get that budget back and to be considered a success. And sure, other installments of this franchise to happen, but looks like it's not going to. Looks like another huge bomb for Sony. Like, poor Sony. At this point, some movie studio just needs to buy them out or something because they don't know what they're doing. I think Sony just needs to make their games and, make their phones and all that and just leave the movies to someone else. Number 2 is Dunkirk, making $17 million. It was very close to beating The Dark Tower, too, which really shows you how poorly The Dark Tower is doing and how well Dunkirk is. But it made $17 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $133 million, and on the worldwide total, it is sitting at $306 million, so it just doubled its $150 million budget, got a little $6 million over than that, which is very good for this film. I'm so glad that Nolan is having a great success with this film, because it is very important to see, and I think the fact that it has been able to stay up for so long, like, even though it didn't get number 1 this weekend, the fact that it's like just almost making number 1 again, I think really shows how much this film is resonating with people and how people are actually being brought into this and maybe coming back to see it because of how well made it is. So that's pretty great for this movie. I'm so proud of Nolan. Number 3 is The Emoji Movie, my favorite film of all time, making $12 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $49 million. Now, the budget is $50 million. It just needs $1 million more to get across that, but it needs to still double that, get to $100 million to be considered a success. Now, similar with The Dark Tower, the last time I checked, they haven't updated it with any foreign totals, but I think as soon as they do that, the movie's numbers will go up, and I think it will get its budget back. It's not a movie that can easily bomb, especially for the kind of movie it is, and because, yeah, basically that's pretty much it, the kind of movie it is, the pandering kids one, because a lot of kids around the world are going to want to see this film because it's pandering to them, and it'll probably get its budget back for sure. I am betting that right now. Maybe before it leaves the top 10, the foreign totals will come in and it'll get more than $100 million. Moving on to number 4, which is Girls Trip, making $11 million. I saw something on Box Office Mojo saying, like, this movie is actually doing a wee bit better than Bridesmaids, which is actually pretty impressive for it, but it made $11 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $85 million. And this is so good. It's like, I think at this point they've quadrupled their budget of $19 million, or tripled at least that. That is so good for this film. And I think from what I'm seeing from the Rotten Tomatoes, the fact that it's barely dropped as well in the box office numbers, this actually does show how surprising people have found this film and how much they're recommending it and people are actually going to see it. Like, I've seen some YouTubers who, like, skip the movie, but then, like, a couple weeks later have actually reviewed it and put up reviews. So that's pretty cool, actually, that this movie's having that kind of effect. I'm sure it's nothing, like, amazing or anything, but the fact that it's a movie that's bringing people more to it than originally on its opening weekend. That's pretty cool. Number 5 is Halle Berry's Kidnap. I didn't think this would make it into the top 5, but it did. The movie that was supposed to come out like 2 years ago or something finally came out, and it made $10 million this weekend at the box office. Now, the budget is $20 million, but I'm going to assume that they didn't spend too much on marketing, so I don't think it needs to make a whole lot over that, but so it's doing... Kidnap is actually doing okay. I thought this movie was for sure just gonna, like, open, like, near the bottom 5 of the top 10, but no, it actually got number 5. Alright, good job, Halle Berry. Moving on to number 6, which is Spider-Man Homecoming, making $8.8 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $294 million. It's almost at $300 million domestically, and on the worldwide chart, it is sitting at $651 million. That is very good for this film. Obviously, I don't need to speak too much about it on here. I think before at least the top 10, it'll maybe close out at around 800 million worldwide, but at least 350 domestically, because this movie, of course, even though Spider-Man fatigue is definitely in, and you can see that with how it doesn't really compare much to the Sam Raimi films, even though there are some people out there saying it's the best Spider-Man film, you can definitely tell that there is some fatigue. This movie's not making as much as maybe it would if this were the first Spider-Man film in 20 years. But this film is still doing pretty good for itself, obviously, especially for a film that takes place 3 years after the last Spider-Man reboot we got. So that's pretty cool. Number 7 is Atomic Blonde, making $8.2 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $34 million. Now, the budget is $30 million, so they got over that a little bit, but they still need to get to 60 to double it and be considered a success, technically. And on the worldwide chart, it is sitting at $45 million. So they're $15 million more away from getting to that doubling point. And I think they'll be able to do that. It has definitely dropped. Last week it opened at number 4, now it's at number 7. It'll probably be hanging on for dear life at number 10 or number 9. Next weekend, but I think this movie is going to do well, and I think it will get to 60 million before it leaves. Now, number 8 surprised me. I thought this movie was opening in a lot of places, and it was, but I think it's more just the subject matter is a big turnoff, and that would be Detroit. This movie made $7 million this weekend, and this is on a budget of $34 million. So I think this is something along the lines of Deepwater Horizon or Patriots Day, where, of course, it is an important movie to see, probably very well made, but because of what it's about, it's probably a big turnoff to a lot of people, which shouldn't surprise many, but I thought it would at least open in the top 5, and this is number 7, which is kind of surprising to me, honestly, especially since there's a lot of Oscar buzz already for this film, and it's only August. Moving on to number 9, which is War for the Planet of the Apes. It made $6 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $130 million, and on the worldwide chart, it is sitting at $240 million. Now, it still needs $60 million to get to $300 million, which is the doubling point of its $150 million budget, but it's about to leave the top 10 altogether. This honestly makes me a little sad that I won't be able to report that it crossed that doubling point. I think it will be able to cross that doubling point. It has multiple other release dates throughout, I think the rest of this month and even some September. So I think for sure the worldwide total will go up, but I'm just a little bummed that I couldn't report on it and, congratulate it for it, because this film should be congratulated since it's one of the best of the year. Let's close out number 10 with Despicable Me 3, the film that has been pandering to kids way better than the Emoji Movie clearly has, because it's made so much more. It made $5 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $240 million, and on the worldwide chart, it is sitting at $879 million. Way to go, Illumination Entertainment. You put out another cash cow that kids would love to see and parents have to get dragged to. Wunderbar, you are out of the top 10. Now it's time for the fun part, the predictions for next week's top 5. I'm going to go number 1 with Annabelle Creation, then number 2, The Nut Job 2, Nutty by Nature, then number 3, The Dark Tower, number 4, The Dunkirk, and number 5, The Emoji Movie. But what are your predictions for next week's top 5? Leave it in the comments below, and if you got your predictions right for this week, you're going to get a shout out right now. Unless you didn't get it right, then I'm sorry. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.